From the streets of Chicago to the hills of Peru, Robert Francis Prevost lived a life of service before becoming Pope Leo XIV, the first American to sit on the throne of St. Peter. His story is one of faith, humility, and unity in a divided world. This is the path of a shepherd who chose to walk with the people. Robert Francis Prevost was born on September 14, 1955, in the bustling city of Chicago to parents of Spanish and Franco-Italian descent. His neighborhood was a patchwork of cultures, faiths, and struggles, where families held onto rosaries as tightly as they held onto hope. From an early age, Robert showed a quiet, contemplative nature. He found peace in the rituals of the church, serving faithfully as an altar boy at his local parish. The incense, the candles, the Latin prayers, they didn't confuse him, they called to him. His mother would often say, "God's voice isn't always thunder, it's sometimes the breath between words." That breath seemed to live inside him. While other boys chased ambition or mischief, Robert chased something deeper. Meaning, in those quiet moments, lighting candles or kneeling alone in prayer, something stirred a calling. And though no one knew it then, the seed of a future pope had already been planted. As Robert grew, so did his hunger for truth. While others looked outward for success, he looked inward for purpose. In college, he studied mathematics logical precise, but it was theology that stirred his soul. The teachings of St. Augustine, with their depth of reflection and passion for God, captivated him. In 1977, he entered the Order of St. Augustine, beginning a life of devotion, study, and silence. By 1982, he was ordained a priest in Rome. Those who met him described a calm presence, a voice that invited trust, and eyes that seemed to see beyond the moment. He wasn't loud, but he was clear. He wasn't proud, but he was firm. He lived simply, prayed deeply, and followed the path wherever it led. What he didn't yet know was that the path would soon take him far beyond anything he had. Imagine, too, the mountains and suffering of Peru. In 1985, Fr. Robert Prevost left the comfort of the familiar and traveled south deep into the heart of Peru. The country was gripped by poverty, political unrest, and fear. In small towns where roads turned to dust and water was a luxury, he found a church that was poor but alive. He served as a parish priest, seminary professor, and spiritual father to many. He didn't preach from above, he walked beside the people. He learned their language, their customs, and their pain. In mountain villages and coastal slums, they called him Padre Roberto, and they trusted him. He built not just chapels, but bridges between cultures, between rich and poor, between the forgotten and the divine. Peru didn't just change him, it claimed him, and in return, he gave it his heart. Years later, he would become a Peruvian citizen, sealing a bond that neither time nor title would ever break. His work in Peru did not go unnoticed. In 2001, Robert Prevost was elected Prior General of the Order of St. Augustine, the highest leadership role within the worldwide community from Rome. He led thousands of friars across continents, guiding the order through a time of rapid change and rising secularism. But leadership never changed him. He refused luxury, choosing humility over hierarchy. He traveled constantly visiting schools in Kenya, missions in Vietnam, and cloisters in Europe, always listening, always learning. His vision was simple: be close to the people and closer still to God. Under his guidance, the order deepened its focus on education, justice, and evangelization. Though far from the Peruvian villages he loved, he carried them with him in every decision. To many, he was no longer just a missionary. He was a shepherd of a global flock, preparing for something greater yet to come. In 2015, Pope Francis appointed Robert Prevost as the Bishop of Chiclayo, a large and often overlooked diocese in northern Peru. Returning to the land of his mission, he didn't arrive as a distant ruler, but as a brother returning home. His episcopal motto was Christus est pax nostra, Christ is our peace. In a region scarred by poverty, injustice, and corruption, he became a voice for the voiceless. He spoke out against abuse, defended the dignity of indigenous communities, and reformed local seminary education. When floods devastated villages, he didn't just send aid, he went himself, walking barefoot through the mud to comfort the displaced. The people saw in him more than a bishop, they saw a father. One old woman said, "He doesn't just bless us, he becomes one of us." That deep connection would later echo inside the walls of the Vatican. In 2023, the call came from Rome once again. Pope Francis appointed Bishop Prevost as prefect of the dicastery for bishops, placing him in charge of choosing and guiding bishops across the world. It was one of the most powerful roles in the Church. Yet Robert remained the same, simple, prayerful, and grounded. That same year, he was named cardinal and given the ancient title of Cardinal Bishop of Albano. For many, he symbolized a church that could bridge continents. To Latin America, he was one of them. To the US, he was a native son. In a time of global division, his life seemed like a living answer unity through humility. When asked about power, he replied, "We are not princes, we are servants." His name rose quietly among those who wondered who might lead the Church next. If the Spirit so willed. On April 21, 2025, the world mourned as Pope Francis passed away, leaving the chair of St. Peter empty once again. Cardinals from every nation gathered in Rome, cloaked in prayer, pressure, and silence. The conclave began. Names circulated, alliances whispered, expectations stirred. But one name kept returning, not from ambition, but from conviction: Robert Francis Prevost. On the third day, as ballots were burned and silence hung heavy in the Sistine Chapel, the world looked to the chimney, then white smoke. Crowds cheered, bells rang, and eyes turned to the balcony. When he emerged, smiling gently beneath the white succhetto, he spoke softly. "I am Leo XIV, a name that evoked strength, peace, and renewal." At that moment, the Church knew. A bridge had been chosen, a man of 2 continents, 2 languages, and 1 heart. The world was watching. History was being written. From his first homily, Pope Leo XIV made his mission clear. The Church must walk with the people, especially the wounded and forgotten. He spoke of justice with tenderness and tradition with clarity. He didn't seek applause, he sought souls. His first actions reflected his heart. He opened Vatican properties to shelter refugees, invited voices from the margins into synods, and visited prisons before palaces. In interviews, he chose Spanish, not Italian, to address the world, reminding millions in Latin America, "You are not forgotten." Critics were cautious, reformers were hopeful, but one thing was certain: Leo XIV didn't belong to one nation. He belonged to a global church, a shepherd shaped by Chicago's steel and Peru's dust, now guiding Rome with steady hands. The papacy was no longer distant. It walked again among the people. In a world torn by war, division, and spiritual fatigue, Pope Leo XIV became a symbol of quiet courage. He launched the Synod for reconciliation, gathering voices from conservative and progressive camps alike, from rich nations and suffering ones. He didn't force agreement, he fostered understanding. "We must listen more than we speak," he said, "and kneel more than we climb." He reinvigorated the Church's role in climate advocacy, denounced political corruption without fear, and championed indigenous cultures as guardians of wisdom. His humility inspired the youth, his strength reassured the elders, and through it all, his motto, "Christ is our pax," echoed in every nation he visited. Under Leo XIV, the lion did not roar, it embraced. And the Church, long bruised and weary, began to rise with new breath, new purpose, and new hope. Today, Pope Leo XIV stands not as a ruler above the people, but as a brother among them. His legacy is still unfolding, written in every soul he touches, every bridge he builds, and every injustice he confronts with mercy. From the streets of Chicago to the peaks of Peru, from whispered prayers to the thunder of history. His journey reminds us that the papacy is not about power, it's about presence. He is a pope born of silence, shaped by service, and called to unify. And while the throne of St. Peter may rest beneath him, it is the world he truly carries on his shoulders. What comes next is unknown, but with Leo XIV, the Church has rediscovered not just its voice, but its heartbeat.